Hey everyone, it's great to see you again. This is Alex Slosby, Noble's class of 1996, here with another Noble's Innovators and Entrepreneurs story. And I'm really excited to have Chris Gaither here with me, class of 1993. Hey Chris, how are you?
Hi, Alex. How's it going?
It's going
Hello
well.
from California.
Oh yeah, great. Yeah, I'm in front of Noble's.
I can see that.
Magic of virtual backgrounds. But it's really great to reconnect with you, and I'm really excited to share your story, particularly because it's a great one of pivots, which so many of us go through, I think, unexpectedly. So again, starting your sort of your teenage years at Nobles, working your way through to Wesleyan, and then you had these three phases, and maybe we'll just tease that, and you can go through it because it's great about sort of self-discovery, right, and figuring out what you really want to do. And so many people go through it. So I'm really excited to help you tell this story. Let's start with Nobles. So I'd love to hear maybe some memories of Nobles when you were there, and then perhaps what took you to Wesleyan.
Yeah, sure. It's shocking to me to think that it's been almost 30 years since I was there on the campus at Nobles. I think the things that stand out to me most are my love of writing really flourished at Nobles. I had a teacher named Brian Ford who assigned us to write a personal essay every week, and I did not want to do that. And it was the most opening experience possibly of my life. I worked my way through a lot of really difficult things that were happening around me and in my family at that time. I worked through those things in my writing, and it made me really fall in love with writing as a lifelong practice. So I keep coming back to that, and when I do, I always think about Brian Ford and about Nobles and the other teachers who encouraged me to write, and also to share my writing in assembly, which was a scary and exhilarating experience. I also think a lot about my experiences on the field and on the water. I was a soccer player and a rower. We had a successful soccer team. We had a terrible rowing team, and both of them were really wonderful. Learned so much from it, and I have so many deep memories of the connections that I made and the competition and just the practice, learning how to be an athlete and learning how to work with a team. It was really wonderful. So those are some of the things that I carry most from Nobles.
It's really funny. So I actually coxed briefly in seventh grade, sort of a ridiculous situation, but I coxed and then got bigger than the rowers, and they were like, you got to row, and I rowed poorly, so I just rowed in middle school. But it's pretty funny because part of the reason why you didn't perform well may have been that I had some influence on the situation. But so Wesleyan, so great. So you had your time at Nobles, and then you chose to go to Wesleyan. What was that decision like?
It was really a time of honoring intuition. I visited Wesleyan, and there was just something right about it. There was just something that felt true and like the thing that I didn't know that I was looking for. And as soon as I really paid attention to that, I said, okay, great, my search is done. I'd visited other schools, and it was the first place where I really felt that experience of being with like my people in my right place. And so I applied early, I think round 2, and I got accepted, and then I was able to enjoy the rest of the spring semester because I already knew where I was going to college. But I think both of them had a real focus on diversity and equity and inclusion in their teaching and in who they chose to bring onto campus. And they also really both focused on critical thinking. Nobles and Wesleyan, they taught me how to think, and that has served me really well in everything that I've done in my life and in my career.
Mm-hmm. So it then sounds like the writing at Nobles, how you learned how to think at Nobles, you carried that into journalism, and that was sort of the first path you set off on, correct?
Yeah. Journalism now feels like the most obvious first job for me to have, but at the time, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I started freelancing for a newspaper, a very small family-owned daily newspaper that was near Wesleyan while I was a senior, and I was the editor of the college paper the Argus at Wesleyan, and I still didn't know that journalism was what I wanted to do. I think after I graduated, I applied to something like 80 newspapers, and I got 2 interviews. Both of them turned into job offers, and I picked the one that paid me the most, which was something like $26,000 a year. And it happened to be the one that I had freelanced for, right near Wesleyan. So that was the start of my journalism career.
And I think as your career continued, I believe you may have interviewed me when I was covering mobile devices. So kind of where did that now part of your career now start to translate to that next pivot? What was that point when you decided, yeah, journalism, but maybe something else?
It really settled in when I was working at that small newspaper. It was one of those moments. In some ways, it reminds me of Nobles, where when you find the right mentor, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a boss, whether it's somebody that you ask to help you and to guide you, when you find that right mentor and they give you the right blend of encouragement and freedom, so much is possible. And I had one of those mentors in the form of an editor at this newspaper. And I just got to try out a lot of different things, and it helped me understand that there's no one way to solve any particular challenge. There's no one way to write a newspaper story. And I just experimented a lot. I said, well, it would be fun to try this. Well, what if I try that? And this mentor gave me a lot of free rein and also steered me away when things really weren't working. But I was able to use those couple of years and the experience that I had there to know that journalism was what I wanted to do, at least for some period of time. I thought it might be the rest of my life, but life has a funny way of changing things up on you. But I moved out here to California to go to grad school, to the Graduate School of Journalism at UC Berkeley. And it happened to be in 1999 when I moved here, and tech was what was going on. I was not a technical person. I didn't have any programming experience. I didn't really know much about it, but it was just the hot story that was happening. And I do remember the first time that I reached out to you and realizing that there was that Nobles connection there. I kept saying, Alex Slusby, I know that name. So it was really fun to reconnect. But I ended up having a 12-year career working for really big newspapers. And the New York Times and the Los Angeles Times. But one of the funniest things was that I ended up becoming the West Coast correspondent for the Boston Globe. So I was living out in California, but my mom in Wellesley was still able to pick up the newspaper and see my name on the front page and be like, that's my son, which was great. And it was kind of full circle for me because I delivered the Globe for a few years when I was a kid to make some pocket money. So it felt like it was meant to be.
So that's great. So then you got into the corporate world. So I think corporate communications, environmental, social responsibility work. Could you share a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, for me, it was a crisis that triggered my move. Some of it was an external crisis. Some of it was my own reaction to that crisis. But the LA Times was in a very difficult financial situation. They went into bankruptcy protection, and all these colleagues around me were getting laid off. And I just noticed my energy really dipping. I just felt afraid. I felt scared, for what the future was going to hold as I was watching people lose their jobs or quit. And I just said, you know what, I'm going to poke my head out there and see what else might be available to me. And I had a whole series of conversations with people, and it led to this shift that you mentioned. This first act of my career was journalism, writing mostly about big tech companies. And then the second act was going inside of these big tech companies and helping them tell their own stories, for specific reasons, trying to drive change, whatever that might be. And so at Google, I led communications around the company's relationship with the newspaper industry, which was, of course, a great fit for me, and it helped me make that transition really smoothly. And then they rewarded me for a job well done by having me run privacy and security communications, which was like getting punched in the face every day doing that for Google. And I learned so much from doing that work. And then that led to a similar kind of job at Apple, working on global communications for their supply chain work, everything from Foxconn suicides to conflict minerals and other things like that, human rights in the supply chain, and also their environmental work. And so I just kept like following one job to the next, and following my instinct and saying, is this right? Does this feel right? Does this feel right? And next thing I knew, I was helping build Apple's environmental program, in many ways from the ground up. And I was in a position of leadership myself. And I kept looking around like, how did I get here? So that was really the second act of my career, and I learned so much from that stage about how to work inside of companies, how to tell stories, and also how to make people who work inside the companies feel a sense of responsibility for the values of the place and for shaping the kind of culture that they want to work in.
Just curious, the LA Times sort of pivot point, right? You were thinking, hey, maybe I've got to find something and I should do it proactively. Just curious, if you think back to it, I mean, if that hadn't happened, do you think you would have just continued in journalism?
Probably. It's funny because one thing that I can notice as I look back at my career is that I kept thinking, I am this. Like, I am a journalist. I am a corporate communications person. I am a sustainability executive. And what I realized was that that attachment to identity didn't really serve me very well. What did serve me well was focusing on what are the elements that allow me to do each of these that actually bring me the most alive. So it was asking questions. It was building connections with people and understanding complex subjects much more deeply. It was taking all the pieces of the story that I had gathered in and kind of reassembling them and putting language that makes people feel things, and then saying like, here's the story. How does this work? And so all of those elements, they served me in both of those and allowed me to kind of drop this idea that I am this job title or I am this job title.
Fantastic. So let's now get to the next chapter, carrying on that metaphor. Share a little bit about what you're doing now.
Yeah. Well, the third act, which is executive coaching and leadership development, was triggered by a really deeply personal crisis. The irony is that I was helping Apple build its corporate sustainability program. And in the process, I did what I've noticed a lot of sustainability folks do, which is I sacrificed my own human sustainability, my personal sustainability for the work. And I just hit this period of incredible burnout. It was 2017. I was in terrible pain. My body had kind of nerve pain going through it. My back kept going out. I sank into a real period of depression. I just didn't feel like myself. My creativity dried up. And it was really a sign that the life that I had created for myself was no longer working for me. The things that helped me feel alive and productive and engaged in the world were actually now things that were getting in the way of what I really wanted to be spending my time doing. Focusing on family and really being an active member of my community where I lived, and focusing on my health, being creative, all of those things I had shoved aside to commute down to Silicon Valley, for 10 years and to work my butt off for 20 years without really taking much of a break. And I just finally realized I need something different. So I took time off. It was an incredible privilege to be able to do that, to be able to spend time just focusing on things that brought me energy again. And on the other end of that, I worked with a coach to help me decide what was next. And we designed kind of my ideal life. And I had this little block that was like, in my ideal day, insert work here. And I didn't know what the work was going to be. I thought maybe communications consulting or something else. But every time I brought forward one of those ideas, it was like, ugh, no, that's not it. No, that's not it. And then my coach raised her hand and said, are you open to an idea? And I said, please. And she said, have you considered being a coach? Because I think you would love it and it would allow you to have the life and the impact that you want to have. And I think you'd be really good at it. And it was like the sky parted and the sun shone on me and the angels started singing, and I knew that was the thing. And she's turned out to be exactly right in that.
Oh, that's fantastic. And maybe just share a little bit more about who you help these days and what you help them to accomplish.
Yeah. It's taken me some time in working with a lot of different leaders to understand what I most love to do in this work. Again, I made the mistake there for a while of confusing the job title with the sense of meaning and purpose that I get from it. I thought like, I am a coach, therefore I have meaning. And what I realized is that the what of my clients is really important to me. What's the difference that they want to make in the world? How do they want to influence their communities? What are the problems that they feel called to work on? We all get bogged down. We all get stuck in these difficult periods where maybe we're not as connected to our own sense of mission as we might be. And I love helping people through that. But really where I get most excited is, helping leaders who are working on big societal and global challenges, help them work through whatever it might be that is covering up their light. It might be burnout, it might be internal politics, it might be just missing some leadership skills, listening or communicating or whatever might be missing from their toolbox, helping them with all of those things so that on the other side, they are the best versions of themselves and they're bright and shiny. And then they are helping make everybody else around them bright and shiny, and they're working on these big challenges. So for me, it's environmental leaders, it's social impact leaders, and my biggest client is a subsidiary of Google called X, which is Alphabet's Moonshot Factory. And so I get to work with people there every day who are working on really incredible projects around climate change and ocean health and robotics to assist people climbing stairs and all kinds of incredible things. But if you're, potential client and I ask you what you're interested in working on, you say, I want to hit my sales targets. I'm like, I know some great coaches who I will refer you to because that doesn't bring me energy.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, never losing sight of what is meaning for you. And I think that's fantastic. So maybe as we wrap up, and again, Chris, this has been just fantastic, just amazing. Perhaps you could share just some thoughts for, say, current students who are thinking about their career paths and innovation, entrepreneurship, or just who are they going to be as they grow up? And maybe also the same goes true for our fellow alumni who are thinking, hey, maybe I'm doing what I should be doing or maybe not. Any just words of advice you have?
Sure. I mean, everybody's path is different. There are a few things that I've noticed have been really helpful for me in my career. One is to maybe treat your career like almost like a science experiment. I'm not a scientist, as my biology and chemistry teachers from Nobles can tell you. I'm not a scientist. I'm more of a words guy. But I've treated a lot of my career as if it were an experiment, right? I come up with a hypothesis. I think I would enjoy doing this. I think this would bring me a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment. What are some small things that I can do to test that idea? I don't need to drop everything and redesign my life entirely when I'm not really sure if that's what would bring me a lot of happiness. So come up with an idea, come up with a hypothesis, and just find ways to test it out. So that's one idea. Another idea is to really pay attention to your own energy. A lot of people talk about following your passion, and I get where they're coming from. Passion can be really important. It can also be really elusive. Like, what does passion mean anyway? And sometimes we don't find passion until we've done the hard work to learn something new. So the way that I like to think about it is rather than follow your passion, follow your energy. Who are the people? What are the relationships that are bringing you energy? And then how can you start to shift the amount of time you're spending with those people? Maybe just turn up the volume a little bit more on the things that are bringing you energy, so the relationships, the tasks, and if things are draining your energy, right, there's some stuff we just have to do because we're grown-ups and we know that there are things that are in our lives that we don't love to do. But again, how can you shift that ratio so you're spending more and more time each day focusing on the things that do bring you energy rather than just things that drain your energy? So those are a couple ideas.
Fantastic. Chris, thank you so much for taking part in this and sharing so, again, openly and honestly. I think it's so helpful for those of us who are still going to figure out what we want to be when we grow up. So thanks to you, and thanks to all of you who are watching. Really appreciate you listening to these stories, and we look forward to bringing you another story soon. Chris, thanks again.
Thank you so much, Alex.
Got it.